Good morning, and if you're joining us, we hope you have a cup of tea this morning because we are going to be having a very relaxed chat about caring, but the conversation is just as important. So this week is Carers Week, and in Monmouthshire, we're doing lots of things to acknowledge the amazing work that carers do within our county. So I'm pleased to say I'm joined by some fantastic people today. We have Kim Sparry and Deb Saunders from our Carers and Young Carers team. And we're also joined by Michelle Boyd from Havel. So morning all. Have you got your cup of tea ready?
Yeah.
Fantastic. So this week is really important because we're acknowledging this fantastic work. Deb, just start me off by telling me who carers are, what work they do, and why is it important this week?
I think particularly the theme of Carers Week this week about making carers visible indicates that very often carers will not be visible or don't feel visible. The term carer people will often think of as a care worker who's paid to go in and look after somebody. This is talking about unpaid workers who are carers, people who are perhaps looking after mum, daughter, son, or a young carer who's perhaps looking after a sibling or looking after a parent as well. So it's a very different thing to a paid care worker. And I think that's one of the messages this year with Carers Week that they're trying to get across. People very often don't recognise themselves as carers. We're often told as carers workers, well, when we got married, it was in sickness and in health, and now it's in sickness, and I'm going to be looking after them, sort of thing. So people don't recognise what they're doing, or the support that they're giving. I mean, the emotional support that you're giving to somebody, sometimes you don't clock that is actually caring for somebody. Sometimes people's networks don't even recognise that what the person is doing is providing that care to somebody, that they are carers. And this is really what Carers Week is about this year, is about highlighting all of that work that people do so that they don't feel that all of that work is not being noticed, isn't being taken into account.
And I suppose what you described there, the fact that people don't have that acceptance themselves, I know I've experienced that personally with my grandmother when she was caring for my grandfather because of that wife-husband relationship. She wasn't accessing the help that she could have because she didn't have that acceptance. Do you find that that's a barrier to some people? That they should, there is a lot of support out there, but because they don't see themselves in that role, they're not getting that support?
Yes, a lot of people would even view it as a sort of a weakness to ask for help. If you have to ask for help, somehow you're not doing it right. There is no doing it right. You're doing it, and if you need support and help to do that, it's above and beyond what you would normally be doing. Please ask for help and get the right support.
So that takes us over to how Monmouthshire County Council are involved. So Kim, would you mind talking me through what Monmouthshire County Council does within the care team, please?
Yeah, so there is an awful lot of support that we provide to carers, but we don't do this just by ourselves. We work very closely with our providers, and by our providers, that they're our third sector providers that offer services to us because they've got more expertise in how they can support carers. Because sometimes it's more around the condition of the person that's being cared for that needs more specialist knowledge that we don't always have, that allows us to tap into their knowledge so that we're offering the right support for carers. And one of the things that we will do as the council is offer what we call a carers needs assessment, and that is anything other than a chat, conversation. How is it that you're caring? How is it that you need support? What is it that you do? And how I try to say to people, it's a bit like you've got a tumble dryer going on in your head. And when you're caring, sometimes it can all be spinning around in there, and you just need to sit down with somebody that's outside your family, your network, to just get the pieces out of your tumble dryer, lay them on the table, and just talk about the things that are very important to you. And sometimes we find that it's the conversation that's enough in itself for a carer or a young carer to feel, yes, I'm okay, I'm coping, or I hadn't actually thought of that. Can we talk a bit more where I can get that support from? So that's very much then when we reach out to our providers who will say, you've got more expertise than us, can you offer us additional support? And it very much is a partnership in how we support our carers and young carers, because we're all experts together, but we're not experts individually, and the sum total is where we can provide the right support for young carers and carers. And as Deb said, carers are experts themselves, so we very much have to consider their knowledge within all of the discussions we have.
And that, obviously, talking about that partnership, it takes me on to Michelle. Michelle, you work for Havel, so could you talk me a little bit about what Havel is and how that partnership with Monmouthshire County Council works?
Of course. So Havel's a national organisation. It's a mental health charity, and it supports individuals, families and service users whose lives have been affected by mental health. Havel actually means equal, and our aim is to ensure that all those people's lives who have been impacted by mental health issues have the same access to opportunities as everybody else in the population. In Monmouthshire, we're funded by the local authority to provide support to carers and families. And we do that as part of the team that Kim's talked about, and it's been a really, really positive, productive partnership so far.
So, Kim, there really is benefits for both here. Could you talk me through a little bit about what those benefits are? You did mention it in your previous answer, but you were talking about that, building on that expertise.
Yes, so we've developed a carer strategy and a young carer strategy in Monmouthshire, and they were very much through co-production collaborative working, and they were developed with carers and young carers. So very much so they came from grassroots level. So we included everybody within that. So it wasn't just carers and young carers, it was very much all the providers, it was people internally, externally. We had to get everybody's views together about where they considered the priorities were for their support that they needed. And those strategies are very much the mainstay in which we provide support to carers, because it's our carers and young carers that have told us those are the most important things to us. So if I can just example Havel, mental health came out as the priority for young carers and adult carers. So it's a way of us working with people to say, what is it that we need to do now to make sure that we are all offering the right support in the way that people have asked us for that support. It's not us telling, it's them expressing to us what works for them. So then it allows us then to go out to the wider networks locally, nationally, to say you also need to provide the support with us, because it goes across the board. So when we're talking to people, they understand it's not us saying it, it's coming straight from the people that need that direct support. And just briefly, you know, all our providers and internal, external partners and carers, and young carers have their own young carers forum, sit on a carers strategy group. So that's very much where we all work together about anything that we think needs to be highlighted locally and nationally to maybe unblock some things that may be stopping progress for support for carers and young carers. And Michelle and Havel are very much part of that strategy group.
And how have you found that working relationship, Michelle? I suppose it's been quite beneficial from your point of view at the organisation.
It's hugely beneficial. From my point of view, it's a real and genuine experience of partnership working. There is a recognition that everyone around that table brings their own skills and expertise, different perspectives, which is always good, fresh viewpoint. And ultimately what it means is you're providing wraparound support for the carer, that their needs really are being addressed, and that as much as we possibly can do to support their lives and the way they are looking after others is achieved.
Fantastic. Now, Deb, I know you work very closely every year on Carers Week, and there's no escaping it. We currently are in a pandemic and very unusual times. So the usual events haven't been able to go ahead, but you have been thinking outside the box, haven't you? You know, we're starting off with our virtual coffee morning. What other things have you been doing to acknowledge Carers Week this week?
Yeah, the team are really, really disappointed because this is very often the highlight of our year. And like you said, we had a huge programme of events planned for this year, and carers we know love them. We love them because we get to meet up with the sort of the ones that we've known for years, and we get to meet new carers. It's a really sort of interesting week. So what we've been doing instead, we have been, like you said, sort of highlighting sort of like through this morning. We've also asked carers to send in their stories. We thought that that would be a good way of getting the message across that that carers are, as well as in their caring role, that they have a life outside of that. So we've asked carers to put together video stories of themselves, perhaps in their caring role, doing what they do, and then doing something that they enjoy doing. Not that they don't enjoy their caring role sometimes, because they do that as well, but they do something that's personally important to them, and also information about how they have coped, what the pandemic, coping in the pandemic has meant for them. We've had a bit of a campaign to get carers to give us their email addresses so that we can contact them virtually and get them involved in carers coffee mornings, perhaps training for carers. We're developing a programme where we can use technology to support carers more in the future as well. But very, very disappointing that we can't all be together at this time.
Thank you. Well, I've thoroughly enjoyed our morning. It's been very insightful, and thank you very much all for joining me. I suppose just before we head off, how can people get in touch if they want to access some of the support you've mentioned, or just talk to you a bit more about, maybe they're finding themselves in a new caring role? How can they get in touch, and where should they go?
Okay, so just very briefly, people can do a search online about carers and young carers, because some people can find general information on there that's of use to them, and sometimes that's just enough. And then if somebody's looking at that information, thinks, I need to talk to somebody, I need to talk to somebody more of a local level, we've got our integrated teams, so they can talk to somebody on those. So we can share those details as contact numbers to get in touch with Monmouthshire County Council. Havel will be the same. We can provide those details for Havel, and the same if you're a young carer. But the one point I would really like to make is that we value our carers and our young carers, but we also recognise that people are individuals in their own right. So we don't label people as a carer and a young carer because that's what we do. It's just a way for us to articulate clearly to other people why they might be asking for additional support, or why we're asking for that support. But first and foremost, people are individuals in their own right.
Thank you very much for joining me today, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.